Here with more on how executives can navigate the uncertainty is Simon Freakley, Chairman and CEO of Alex Partners, a global consulting firm. You must be busy.
It's a busy time, and it's certainly a stressful time to be a CEO at the moment.
Right. So that's what's so confusing is I talk to some CEOs and they're like, nope, U.S. still a good place to do business. But then the confidence is so low. Then I hear about projects being put on pause, and then we hear about Johnson & Johnson investing $55 billion. I can't make sense of this.
Yes, well, the investment decisions, of course, are multi-year decisions and multi-year programs. So I suspect that's been in the cooking for quite some time. But the problem for CEOs at the moment is that they simply can't pivot as quickly as policy is being announced. They're being whipsawed by these sort of daily announcements on tariffs, which go often against what was announced the day before. What that's resulting in is profound uncertainty, but also some paralysis in the executive suite as to where to move and when. And so what we're seeing is that CEOs, the best CEOs, are saying, well, look, let's focus on the things that we can control. Let's take out the cost where we can. To the extent possible, let's move fixed cost into variable. Let's focus on our core activities. One is a strategy to keep your sanity, but secondly, it's a strategy to develop your best year. But the profound uncertainty that's sitting in C-suites and boardrooms at the moment is causing a problem.
That sounds like a recipe for limiting potential losses as opposed to maximizing for growth.
Yes. Well, of course, when we were last together in January, I mean, CEOs were almost giddy at the prospect of revenue growth,
yes.
You know, prospect of lower taxes, prospect of lower regulation. It was going to be go, go, go. Here we are, almost 8 weeks later. It feels very different. Now, is there some room for optimism? Yes, there is. I think there's still quite a lot of optimism about what AI and Gen AI can do for business. The cases to use AI for efficiency, I think, are well made now. You know, how, for instance, you cut the cost of call centers, for instance. But what people are now really understanding is how to use these tools to drive revenues. So there's still optimism about that. So I don't think it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when people invest, when they think things either settle or they have clear line of sight, because CEOs are craving certainty.
Yeah, and focus on the things you can control, which makes total sense. I wonder if the skill set needed to get through this period of turmoil is different than the ones that a lot of the CEOs or top executives have relied on to get to where they are. We spoke with Sean West, who is a former deputy CEO of the Eurasia Group, about CEOs and the skill sets that they need. And this is what he said. Take a listen.
If you treat the U.S. as this exceptional place with open markets and rule of law and all these freedoms, then you're not as successful as if perhaps you cut your teeth operating in emerging markets and operating, you know, if you're, say, a foreign-born CEO, you were a CEO of a foreign company, you understand how to deal with governments that have centralized power. You understand how to deal with governments that don't give you the benefit of the doubt in court, or courts that don't give you the benefit of the doubt. And you size your investments and you size your moves accordingly.
Is that something that takes on more importance now, the ability to operate in, I don't want to say hostile environments, but certainly environments that are less friendly to business than perhaps the U.S. has been?
Well, it's such an interesting question. In the conversations I have with CEOs of our clients every day, what I'm seeing is that the skill set is still the essential skill set, but the mindset has to be a little different. The mindset has to be one of being prepared to pivot quickly, not being a hostage of any decision that's gone before, being prepared to be bold, but also to make sure that you have options. And so the pandemic, of course, to some extent was a dry run for this whole sense of having come out of a globalized world and interconnected and just-in-time supply chains, and what we needed was just in case, not just in time. I think the CEOs that lived through the pandemic years had to develop a mindset of agility, and that's serving them now.
When you take a look at the idea of, say, pressing the pause button or retrenching a little bit, when does a pause button or retrenching become really like scaling back, dumping projects, having to let people go? Like, what's a time frame for that?
Well, there are things, Alex, that CEOs can do now. So we have dozens, for instance, of tariff war rooms that are being set up with our clients, just understanding in an environment where tariffs are certainly going to go up, how can companies look at the combination of different countries of origin of their products to minimize the likely impact of tariffs? How can they deconstruct products to understand how they could maybe source from different countries key elements, or indeed import partially built products so they avoid the tariff cost on the indirect cost inherent in those products? So this engineering of tariffs, this tariff shopping, if you like, is something they can do now because they know the direction of travel. And actually, within probably 3 months, they can mitigate by 5 or 10% the cost of increased tariffs. In 6 months, they can probably mitigate it by 25%. So moving to action now on these just-in-case strategies is what the best CEOs are doing.
And if they're doing that now, but in 2 months it goes away completely and we're in a world of no more tariffs, are they still going to move forward with these kind of plans for the longer term?
Well, what I'm hearing is that people are assuming that tariffs aren't going away quickly. There will be, the end destination will be higher tariffs, so let's get organized for that. But it's complicated. Let's take the Chevy Silverado, for instance, a top-end vehicle, approximately 700,000 of those vehicles made last year. 30% of the vehicles were made in Mexico, 20% of the vehicles were made in Canada, but even the 50% of the vehicles that were made in the US, products, key elements, dashboard products, door linings, powertrain elements are being imported from Germany and China and what have you. So it's not just as easy as bringing the production on domestically onshore, even if the factories have the capacity for more production. It's such an interconnected world.
Yeah.
This planning and programming and just-in-case strategizing is the key to surviving this, and they can be doing that now.
So you have to be agile and nimble, and if you're in good financial shape, great. But if you're in turnaround mode, it's even harder. I think about companies like Nike or Boeing that are trying to struggle through righting their ship at a time when they're dealing with all this uncertainty. You say control what you can control, and that might mean reducing your costs, maybe trimming staff. How do you hold on to the best talent, though, at a time when you're trying to cut costs by reducing staff? Because your talent doesn't want to stay around if people are jumping ship.
Well, it's such a challenge in these times. What I find the best CEOs do is that they over-communicate to their staff. They say, we don't have the answers necessarily, but this is what we're doing to determine our best strategy. I always say that the best CEOs actually are their own chief communication officers. They just narrate what they're doing and why. So take Boeing, for example. I mean, they've got some really significant manufacturing footprint challenges. These are multi-year strategies to turn around. This volatility is not helpful, but their core challenge remains their core challenge.
Absolutely. All right, Simon, really, really appreciate it. Fantastic conversation here with Simon Freakley, CEO of Alex Partners. Thank you so much.